Good evening and welcome to Marshall Meh. And tonight we have a special guest, me and my co-host Renee, the pioneer, as far as I know, on social media, tying live interviews on Facebook, Sifu Dwight Woods, and incredibly instrumental in me coming up with FMA discussion. Um, incredible guy. Love him dearly, and we're going to talk about. He sent us some questions, and we're going to ask him how he navigates that jungle. I love JKD group. I've seen some struggles over there, and it looks pretty heated at times. So I don't know, is he just checking it out? Is he making sure like I am, or is he kind of just see, lets it play out and see? So we'll find that. But he did send an incredible list of questions. So without further ado, we're going to be bringing up, if you are watching, tell us where you're watching from, smash that like button, and here we go. There's a delay, which I don't. Oh, here we go. Yeah. How are you? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you a little
What's
bit.
going on?
Yeah,
I don't know. It's Renee's fault.
it's always my fault.
It's definitely
E-
his fault.
Even before I walk into a
What
room,
about
it's my
now?
fault.
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right.
Do you
So
hear
tell
him
me now.
find Renee?
Um,
He's kind of on the share auto tune right now.
Yeah, he's got a an echo thing going on. I'll tell you what, Renee, you and I could just carry the show ourselves. Who
let's get
needs
going on.
who needs Dean Franco?
That's it. Actually, all right. Let's. I'm going to actually send Renee these questions. Now, do you hear me now? Okay.
Not yet.
What is going on? What is the matter here?
Okay, that sounds better.
Nothing. That's not so better now.
Yes.
Okay,
I
it's
wonder
something
if
going on
it's
with.
if it.
All right, something going on with Renee's. When he comes on, sometimes, if depending on the device he's using, just causes haywire. But any rate,
Ah.
so you
Do you
sent me a
guys
bunch
use
of.
laptops? Do you guys use laptops or phones?
No, we kind of figured out if he uses one certain phone, then he's good to go. And so that's
But he never uses a laptop.
no. He did, but so let's just see. This could be improved, but I want to get to the questions. I'm going to bring him back up, but uh,
Okay. Okay.
what is the single biggest lie people still believe about Jeet Kune Do? Oh my goodness.
um,
uh,
it depends. It depends on who you're talking to, right? Who you're dealing with. Okay. So think about this, right? So I got interested in Bruce Lee when I lived in what was called at the time the third world. I think today you refer to them as developing countries, right? So in the third world, the only Bruce Lee access that we had was movies. So a physically talented individual could mimic Bruce Lee and become, someone of recognition because, oh, look, he moves like Bruce Lee. But since he doesn't have access to what Jeet Kune Do really is, okay, he could spout, all his truisms and what have you. Now take that into the first world. You can have it the same thing happen to a certain extent. People who don't have an in-depth understanding, but they're physically talented, And so they believe that Jeet Kune Do is whatever works for you, because there's a lot of that kind of talk about Jeet Kune Do, right? You know, take whatever version of absorb what is useful, make it your own, and whatever, right? So Bruce Lee never said do whatever you feel like, right? Bruce Lee worked on certain things. So if you're not working on those things, then no, that's not really Jeet Kune Do. There's an approach to Jeet Kune Do. So the biggest lie is that it's whatever works, right? Without any kind
Whatever
of
works and
like,
whatever
yeah,
works and
you
whatever
know,
you chose to blend.
but yeah, but it in the training of it, right? It's a whole adventure and endeavor. It can't be just whatever works, right? So I like the 360 jump spinning back kick,
Mm,
right? But that violates a Jeet Kune Do principle of economy of motion, or even simplicity and directness. You see,
exactly.
you can't
Exactly.
go right. You know, okay. So you have to be careful navigating the waters, because if that same spin and jump back kick, if a guy goes, yeah, man, but every time I fight, and I fight all the time, I kill people with it. I can't tell him, okay, well, you know what?
Yeah.
Right? Okay. But it's the lazy people, right? It's the lazy people that some people use that line, Jeet Kune Do is whatever works, right? You know, like Bruce Lee said, um, uh, efficiency is anything that scores. So some people will try to blend that into a thing that justifies them being lazy or being unstructured or overly eclectic, you know, maybe even, you know, all philosophical, right? Because it's like this, okay? If you ask somebody anything about Bruce Lee or Jeet Kune Do, here's one answer that always works: be water, my friend.
Mm, in the interview. Yeah.
That's all you got to say. Because now you sound like you know what you're talking about.
Right. Just say that one phrase
Right? Yeah.
and you're good to go. All right.
Yeah.
Uh,
Just go be water, my friend.
just be water, and then all problems are solved. All right. I'm gonna bring it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. That's it.
Has freedom in JKD become an excuse for not having standards? Ooh, a good one.
Okay. So I talked about this recently on the broadcast, right? Because my teacher, Mr. Anasano, is famous for saying that Jeet Kune Do cannot be standardized. Now, after 40 years of hanging out with him, I know what he means. At least I think I understand what he means. The problem is that it's the word standardized. Because, okay, so then that means there is nothing that is a Jeet Kune Do standard. So it goes back a little bit to what we were just talking about, that Jeet Kune Do can be any old thing. But no, there's got to be standards. You see? So then, oh, but freedom. Yeah, but it's not freedom to be an idiot, right? And go, well, Bruce Lee said efficiency is anything that scores. No. So freedom to a certain extent has become like the get out of jail free card for people who don't want to be held accountable. You see? So it's so for example, it's like it works in two ways, and it's really interesting. So there are people who will tell you that Jeet Kune Do, that you have to preserve the curriculum, the 1966 or the 1967 curriculum. And then there will be people who will go, well, no, because freedom in Jeet Kune Do means there is no curriculum, right? There is no standardized training method because it's supposed to be free. But that's nonsense. See, the problem is in that word that Bruce Lee had very high standards. So you can standardize it by training to achieve those same high standards that he had. You don't go, oh, Bruce Lee was a physical specimen. He was so talented and so gifted. So there's things that he could do that nobody could do. Okay, fine. But that doesn't mean that I don't aim high. So we have to have standards. So this idea that there's no standards, that's where I take issue with it. But so when Sifu Dan says Jeet Kune Do cannot be standardized, what he's actually saying is that it can't be so fixed that if Dean Franco is running a Jeet Kune Do school and Dwight Woods is running a Jeet Kune Do school and Rene Kokolo is running a Jeet Kune Do school, it's all the same. So when you teach your beginner class, you start with exactly the same thing that I start with in my beginner class, and Renee starts with exactly the same thing. So it's standard across the board. That's what he's talking about. But some people misinterpret this use of standard to think, oh, it means do any old thing and call it Jeet Kune Do. No, 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 no. I have no idea if that makes sense.
Interesting.
Because my goal in coming on the show is to wipe that frown off Renee's face, right? And have him not fold his arms like this and cock his head and go, right?
Listen, it's that's going to be impossible. I have Spanish and Italian blood that runs through
Oh,
my body, and
oh God.
this to me is relaxing. Like, and like my wife says, I have resting murderer face. I am. I assure you, I am listening.
Okay.
I'm digesting. I'm not dismissing. I just I just have that I don't give a shit look, but I promise you, it's that's not the way it is. And listen, I'm also like I trained in Jeet Kune Do for 20 plus years, so I'm just listening to what you're saying, and when I think I have something that's somewhat intelligent to say or something I want to interject with, I will, but I'm not disagreeing with you on anything.
I would actually welcome the disagreement because you know me,
Well,
Dean.
that's Dean. Dean will
Oh, okay.
disagree. See, this is why like I look mean, but I'm actually just like I'm agreeing with you. Dean
Well,
looks
we got
nice.
this tone. I'm the nice one.
Dean's the one who's
Oh
got
my
to get
goodness.
you got to
Okay,
get your you got to
here's the
get
next
your
question.
what do you call it, your Wi-Fi
You
fixed.
call it JKD. I don't know what is going
Yeah.
on.
Yeah,
Did he
I think
send
your
you?
wife.
Can you still call it JKD if it doesn't resemble what Bruce Lee was doing in Chinatown?
Um, okay, you got to run that by me again.
Okay. Can you still call it
Hmm.
JKD if it doesn't resemble what Bruce Lee was doing in Chinatown?
Well, it depends on what it looks like. Because if in Chinatown, let's say in Chinatown, right, Bruce Lee had um, straight lead and straight rear. And let's say he mixed those two in high and low configurations. And then his only three count was straight lead, straight rear, and lead hook. And that's what Chinatown consisted of. But over the decades, you added, you replaced the hook with an uppercut. You replaced the hook with let's say you put in a rear uppercut, and so your combinations, right, go past what Bruce Lee did.
Okay.
Okay, it's still Jeet Kune Do, if it's adhering
Okay.
to the principles and the guidelines, even if it doesn't look exactly like what he was
Okay.
doing, because that was 1967, right? Things have
Yeah.
evolved and progressed since then. So you can still call it Jeet Kune Do if it's following the guidelines, if you're applying the principles and following the guidelines. But it doesn't. But it doesn't have to be exactly what you find in here, right? In terms of, let me see if I can find it right now. Um,
Sorry, was that Jackie Chan on the front of that cover? Or
yes, that's Jackie Chan from that famous scene in Enter the Dragon.
excellent.
Um, okay, so where are we? 207, right? Let me see. I used to know these pages by heart, but not anymore because now I'm old. But in this book about combinations, you only see, yeah, I don't have the page. I don't have the page there. But that's what I'm saying. It could be something other than what you find in the notes in commentaries on the Marshall Way, or even in the notes in the Tao, or what have you. Okay, and then again, how many people are there that could tell you what the Chinatown training looked like? How many people are there in the world who were there that could tell you? To the best of my knowledge, there's only two, right? There's Dan Inosanto and there's Steve Golden, and that's it.
I think that's one of my issues with JKD nowadays is that everybody tells their students and their classes what Bruce was thinking, or like, listen, it drives me bananas. Like, I remember when Quentin Tarantino made that movie Once Upon a Time in Hollywood,
Yeah,
and it shows that that guy Cliff beating up Bruce Lee, and everybody was up in arms, and I was like, hey, it's plausible, and people like tore me apart. They're like, how dare
yeah,
you say that about Bruce? It's like
yeah. Well, I
he
mean,
was he was 126 pounds, and if
right.
a guy's 200 pounds, I'm not saying Bruce wasn't talented. He sure as hell was, but still gonna be, that's still gonna be a hell of a fight, right?
But see, my thing with that it's not even that. It's Quentin Tarantino makes his living in fiction. He's not a he's not a documentarian. He's a filmmaker,
Hmm.
right? So if you what if somebody made a movie and showed Bruce Lee as a comedian, right? So I write this screenplay about this completely secret life that Bruce Lee had as a stand-up comic that only Linda knew about. Can you imagine the grief I would get? How dare you? How dare you take the world's greatest martial artist and make a movie about him having a secret life as a comedian?
Yeah,
Because it's fiction. You can write fiction about a real life person. You can even make jokes about real life people.
true.
You can do that. So Quentin Tarantino, all he was doing is saying, well, in my fictionalized story, a stuntman threw Bruce Lee into the side of a car. That's allowed.
And plausible.
Well, see, now I don't take it that far because I don't know.
Yeah.
But I do know that when you make a work of fiction, even
Mhm.
if you use real life people, you can say this happened. Um, I just watch a woman be elected president of Venezuela in a season of Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan. Venezuela is a real country, but I don't think it has had a female president, but because it's a work of fiction.
Yeah.
So Tarantino deals in fiction. I don't.
I just think people get really emotional about a lot of the stuff when it comes to Bruce Lee and like
Yeah,
listen, I hosted Guru Dan in Toronto a couple times,
and didn't
and
invite me.
well, I didn't know you. Plus, I didn't think you liked me, and then also, um, it was what I remember when I was told like we got to take care of Guru Dan because people are crazy. It was insane what people would like people were like hounding him like we were trying to take him to lunch.
Hmm.
And this like one guy was like, "What did Bruce Lee eat for breakfast?" He was just like, and
Hmm. Yeah,
it's like, man, this is insane. And to be honest with you, like I, I don't know when did Bruce pass away? Was it 71, 73,
73.
73?
Hmm.
Who knows where he would have taken Jeet Kune Do, right? Like I'm grateful for what Guru Dan did.
Right.
It's crazy that after so many years, like there people are obsessed with someone where the person who, in my eyes, is the hero in Jeet Kune Do is Guru Dan because he kept it going.
Yeah, yeah, to a certain extent. Talking about Inosano and crazy people, Dean, you've heard from Burton Richardson the story about being Inosano's bodyguard in New York, right? The first New York seminar,
Yes, I did.
right? Those were I had double duty. I was both a bodyguard and a cameraman at that first. I think it was 1989 seminar in New York because there was a character from Connecticut who somehow had it in for Inosano and had threatened him and whatever, and then and so we had to take certain precautions during that seminar. Right. Here's another funny one. Right. But this one wasn't threatening at all. Right. So he comes to Miami, right, to do my weekend seminar. We're in baggage claim at Miami International. Okay. And we're waiting at the carousel. So I see this kid, right, recognize him. And then the kid walks up. Right. But I mean, he stays a respectful distance away from him. Right. And he goes, Dan Inosano, us. And he bows, right, and takes off. Okay. And that's the kind of thing that I'm very used to happening if I'm with him and he's out in public, like I've seen people in the hotel lobby, seen people whispering to each other, "Oh, that's that guy from whatever, whatever, whatever." So I I I know what you mean, especially about the people who Dean and I were talking earlier about the people who wanted to get closer to Inosano, to get closer to Bruce Lee through Inosano. So it's like, oh man, if I could ask Dan Inosano one question, it would be, what was Bruce Lee's favorite breakfast meal?
I think everybody needs to have a hero, and I think some people really, they want to know a lot about, you know, their hero's personal information, sort of thing.
They
Um,
they, they should be
I'll,
they should be aware of that saying, never meet your heroes.
I've some of my greatest disappointments in life have been meeting my heroes.
Yeah,
Um, even when I was working security and I met a lot of celebrities, sometimes the people who I thought were dickheads were actually the nicest people in the world, and the people who
right.
seemed to be the nicest were the opposite.
Hmm.
And I've said this before. When I met Guru Dan, um, I was actually blown away by how polite he is,
Yeah.
and and again, like I remember meeting him a few years later after I hosted him, and he walked up and said, "Hey, Renee, how are you?" And I wasn't like, oh my god, he knows my name. I was like, wow, that guy's polite enough to remember who my name, what my name is. I didn't think anything special of myself, other than the fact that he was polite enough to remember who you are. Like, as far as your name, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, it kind of blew me away.
Yeah.
And how humble he is. Like, I've met instructors who don't have a tenth or 1/100th of the information that he has, and who are these prima donnas that walk around where it's like, and listen, I don't make friends easy, and I sure as hell lose friends real quick by my level of honesty when I meet people and talk to them. But he's
Right.
just like, when we sat down to have dinner, when I was hosting him, I tried to talk to him about everything except for martial arts, just because I'm pretty sure he just gets beaten over the head with that on a daily basis, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was just like cool about it. Um, it was actually a real pleasure to be around him, just because he's so genuine.
Hmm. Yeah. You're not wrong at all. But I know also, um, he doesn't mind talking about martial art as often as he can.
Yeah.
That's one thing that has remained consistent. But I could see why someone would be like, no, I don't want to talk to him about. I don't want to talk to him about martial art because that's his life. I'm going to try to talk to him about something different.
Well, the reason I did that is just because I saw the constant barrage the entire
Yeah,
day
yeah,
when we were at the seminar, or
yeah,
any like second you had where people just ask him like, and sometimes I feel people are asking questions just for the sake of asking a question, right? Like they might already know the answer, and it's
oh
like,
yeah,
well, and
yeah.
chi sound, do you have two fingers up or three
Right.
fingers up? It's like, like,
And
shut the fuck up, sort of thing.
that's
And
some annoying shit. It really
yeah,
is. So you know what I did? You know what I did in the last few years of my hosting? One, I included the Q&A session, right,
uh-huh.
as part of the seminar time. It's not like, here we train the seminar, now the seminar ends, now we do Q&A. No, Q&A is part of the seminar time because you should pay to hear him talk, right? But the other thing was, you had to send your questions into me beforehand. And then I sat down with my printout of the questions and I asked him the questions. That way, any stupid stuff about two fingers in Chisao, right? I got rid of.
Yeah,
You see? So it's only quality questions because I'm not here to waste his time or anybody else's time. But I made that part of the seminar structure.
that's awesome. It's a great idea.
Yeah, more people should
I
more
actually
people
wanted to
should
do
do it.
that. I wanted to do that with you tonight as well, but Dean shot me down. He was like, no. Like,
Ah,
let's get some questions written down. Like, Dwight's a very legit dude. Has a lot of has a lot of experience, and he said, Renee, this is really my show, and you're just,
yeah.
I'm just the eye candy.
Yeah, yeah, I know. DF is not his real initials. It's actually
Oh
CF
my.
for control freak. That's really what it is.
You
I
have
mean,
no idea.
yeah. I
You have
mean,
no idea.
Renee, do you know that
All lies.
I started a show called the FMA Files,
Hmm.
right? And I think Dean might have been the number two guest on it or something,
Wow.
right? And he came in, did that show, and then he says, "You know what? I could do a better job than you of this." And that's
He
how
actually
FMA discussion was born.
he actually mentioned that to me.
Yeah,
No,
He actually mentioned
yeah.
that to me.
He just came in and he says, "You know what, Dwight? You don't know what the heck you're doing. I'm taking over," and that was
Yeah,
it.
he actually called me up. He said, have you ever met Dwight before? And I was like, no, not really. He goes, well, I showed him how the show should be. He just never took my advice.
Uh,
And so,
right?
let me ask, so you were training with
this
Guru
is
Dan in California?
this is blasphemy.
I was I mean, I've always been a long distance student.
Okay.
Right. So when I started with him, 1983, I was still living in Barbados. I'm wondering if Dean's Wi-Fi problem is that he has the laptop and the phone on at the same time.
Oh.
You see, I
Well,
wonder.
he's got a,
I
he's
don't.
he's
I could see. I mean,
he's checking his OnlyFans account to make sure that it's doing
Ah,
okay.
well, hey, business is business,
is
boy.
that
Yeah.
better?
You gotta do
Yeah,
it.
it's what's his, I don't know, I think his
Better?
I forgot what the name of his channel is. It's something like one guy, two sticks or something like that. I'm not really sure.
Yeah. If I had a channel, it'd be long and short.
But
Is that better? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we
So it's not better.
no, it is actually
Okay.
better.
yeah,
Oh God.
because if you have two pieces of
Oh, it is.
equipment
Yeah, it's much
running
better.
running on Be Live, it might stress out the connection. I don't know, but I you know
Oh my goodness. No, no. I mean, it makes sense. The only reason I do that is I kind of where I can share it to the other group makes complete sense. So,
Yeah, but
huh,
what I do is I have
for
I have
that.
two
But
I have two
I'm
tabs,
glad it's
right? That I
true.
split.
That story.
Okay, I split the two tabs, and so one tab is Be Live, and the other tab is Facebook. But they're all on the laptop. Cause see, Renee, when I first started using Be Live,
Hmm.
here's
Got it.
what they said: we recommend using a desktop or a laptop, and Chrome or Safari browser, and headphones.
Mm.
Have you ever seen Dean Franco, who
That's
uses
the
Be
same.
Live,
Yeah.
the same platform? Have you ever seen him plug in with headphones or anything?
No, he actually refuses.
Exactly. Right? Because that's how those kids are. Everything has to be
Hey,
wireless
you
and
had them.
Bluetooth, right? And Bluetooth and this thing and the next. Okay? Not me. Old school. Wired, laptop, desktop,
Kidding.
and I'm good.
Makes sense.
I guess I gotta get with the program. I've been laughing. But all that is left the program. I honestly what seafood, and I asked him, "Hey, do you care?" About my, so that is all. I went to so whatever he's telling you. That's it. But okay,
Yeah.
I got the
No,
next question. I'm glad this is working
okay.
out better. Okay,
Okay.
if Bruce had lived, what do you think would not be in JKD today? And Boss, this is going to kind of touch on your question.
Look, this is something that comes up every week, right? And I try to stay away from, I talked about this just last week. I try to stay away from what I have been told is called presentism, and especially the presentism where you inject your preferences, your likes and or dislikes into today in reference to somebody from the past. So, if you ask me if Bruce Lee had lived, what do I think, whatever, whatever, I have to be sure that I don't start talking about, let's say, right? Let's say that I have an ongoing love affair with Filipino martial arts. So you ask me, if Bruce Lee had lived, what do I think would have happened? And I go, man, I think that he would have built upon the little bit of experience in FMA that he had with Inasano. I think he would have gone further with it and developed, the double stick some more, and the stick and dagger, and single dagger, and double dagger, and whatever. I should not, right? I should not say I think, because what I'm really doing is saying, I wish he had lived, and I wish that that is what had happened if he had lived.
Mm.
If I'm going to answer it in my estimation intelligently, then I think in terms of what Bruce Lee did do during his lifetime, I don't impress upon him my preferences, what I would have loved to have seen, right? So the short answer, that's the long convoluted answer. The short answer is I don't have a friggin' idea.
See, for me, I'd be more curious on how he would have dealt with the different factions that try to open up. You know, like when the nucleus happened
No,
and
no,
all that
no,
stuff.
no, no. Because if Bruce Lee had lived, I am fairly sure none of that stuff would have happened.
Exactly.
That's the problem. You see? That's the problem. All those things happened for real because Bruce Lee died for real. So to imagine that if Bruce Lee had lived, there would have been factions. Do you really think, right, that Bruce Lee's personality was such that somebody goes, "Oh, well, you know, Bruce, I'm going to go do my own Jeet Kune." Boy, please. No
Yeah.
way. That shit ain't happening.
It's like when instructors who have passed on and their wives now, who have never trained, are all of a sudden issuing certificates and whatnot on an art that they have no idea about.
Right? You see? That type of thing. I don't
Uh-oh.
see that happening,
Oh,
right?
hey, listen, I'm not in the JKD game anymore, and I
Okay?
love the art, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna call it for what it is, man. Like I
Yeah.
know a
Yeah.
lot of people who got certified by someone's wife who had never trained before,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
it's like, and they sit there and proudly present their certificates,
Yeah.
and I sit
Yeah.
back and I'm like, what are you doing?
The internet, social media at all it's a fascinating world, isn't it?
I think when when you're trying to make a living off of dead people and riding their coattails, I think it's pretty interesting, right? And that's something I've had some issues with,
Okay.
especially when I was still in JKD. I just like,
Right.
man, like, who are you to tell us how this is supposed to go? Just
Yeah.
because you have some sort of family relation or something, right?
Yeah. Did you ever hear this story? Inasano finishes a 45-minute demonstration of Filipino martial arts in, I think it was in Chicago, if I remember what he told me, right? Um, and he goes, "Are there any questions?" And some lady raises her hand and says, "Well, aren't you just trying to make a name for yourself off of Bruce Lee?" And he had just finished 45 minutes of FMA. And that type of thing that you just mentioned, Renee, people trying to live off, in some instances, even a spurious relationship to somebody else. He went through a lot of that. Okay? He went through a lot of that and he didn't care for it at all. And so I think in some ways, to a certain extent, to a certain degree, his perceived um, diversion or departure from Jeet Kune Do was because of that. Doesn't matter what I do, somebody is going to be upset and somebody is going to accuse me of trying to make money off of Bruce.
Yeah, I would have had a perfect answer for that person. Like I would have asked her for her name or the whoever the person's name is, and say, "I think you dropped something in the parking lot." I'll reach into my pocket and go like this, and it's like we're talking about someone who's documented who trained with him, not just trained with him, was a really close friend of his,
Oh,
and
God.
Yeah.
kind of brought things
Okay.
forward. It's just
Next question.
Dean wants me to wants to cut me off.
Okay.
Oh, no, go finish. I can wait.
No,
Right.
no, I'm done. No,
So,
no, actually, I'm not done. So
uh,
I think it bothers
okay.
me that someone who was such a close friend of
All right.
his. It wasn't like you know Paul down the street who had his picture taken with with Bruce at a convention, now all of a sudden claims to be his best friend and teaching his teachings.
Hmm.
We're talking about someone who's a really close friend of his, and they train together a lot, right?
Hmm.
That's a big difference.
Yeah.
It's like in the PTK world, it's the same thing. Like all of a sudden, everybody's got some PTK group going and claiming that they know, what PTK should be, um, but they don't, right? It's just it's become a big political stew pot of bullshit.
I wonder if they know that it used to be PTA.
Mhm.
Eh,
Okay.
yeah, and there again, the
You
Guru Dan
ready?
trained with Leo quite a bit too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Dean Franco, we're waiting on you.
Okay.
How can
Did
how can
the
he check OnlyFans in the
introduction,
middle of what?
what? Did the introduction of Filipino martial arts into the Anasano curriculum help or hurt the public understanding of JKD?
Did the introduction of Filipino martial art into the Inasano curriculum help or hurt the public understanding of Jeet Kune Do, right? Okay. So you see, so that's interesting, right?
Correct.
So it's into the Inasano curriculum, not the Jeet Kune Do curriculum. It's into the Inasano curriculum. You see? So now what we're dealing with is the public, some members of the public. We're dealing with the interpretation, right, of some members of the public. But it's the Inasano curriculum. It's not the Jeet Kune Do curriculum because Filipino martial art was never um, injected right into the Jeet Kune Do curriculum. So what happened was that again, if we go back to the people, oh my God, Bruce Lee's top guy, Dan Anasano, is coming to town and doing a seminar. I'm there. I'm the biggest Bruce Lee fan in this state. I'm going. You get there, and Anasano says, okay, um, I want you to grab double stick. And you're like, oh, no, okay, okay. Because Bruce did double stick in Enter the Dragon, right? But then it doesn't look exactly like what Bruce Lee was doing, right? It's all these heaven six drill and earth six and open position and closed position and whatever. And it doesn't look like Enter the Dragon. So now I'm disappointed, So I paid my money, so I stay at the seminar because I know that there's going to be another session later that day after lunch. But then after lunch, I still don't see any Bruce Lee looking stuff. So now I'm confused because I didn't understand that it's the Inasano seminar curriculum. All right, that's what he's doing. He's doing an Inasano martial arts seminar. It's not a Bruce Lee Jeet Kune Do seminar taught by his premier disciple Dan Inasano. So that's how
Right.
they
He's
end up
doing
getting
Anasano.
confused. But this is the thing, right? But this is the thing. Because they're not capable of strategic thinking, they say he confused them, not that they confused themselves. You get what I'm saying?
Okay. Yeah,
Right?
I do.
So because on an Inasano seminar, um, Saturday morning we do double stick. Saturday evening we do Penjak Silat. Then Sunday we do kickboxing, and then Sunday morning we do kickboxing, and then Sunday evening we do stick and dagger. Okay, because I'm not able to think strategically, I do one of two things. No, so two or three things can happen. One thing that can happen is you go, well, Inasano is confusing me because I thought it was going to be Jeet Kune Do because he's Dan Inasano, Bruce Lee's top guy.
Mm.
The other thing that can happen is you go, oh, well, this makes sense. Jeet Kune Do is a mix of different arts. So if the top disciple of the founder of Jeet Kune Do is showing four different arts in four different sessions in a seminar, this must mean that Jeet Kune Do is a mix of different arts because this is what he's doing. Now, in both those instances, right, they are not thinking. You see, they're just misinterpreting. Now, the third thing that can happen is that you go, oh, this is some cool stuff. I like it. And so you sign up for another Inasano seminar, right? Because you're able to think for yourself and you're also able to think beyond Bruce Lee. And I say that sitting here wearing this,
Thinking
right?
beyond him. Yeah.
Yeah. My good friend Bob Lander said to me today that,
Imagine
you know,
that.
for somebody obsessed with Jeet Kune Do, you this and this and this and this. And I said, Bob, here's the thing. My obsession is with martial art. Okay? My obsession is not with Jeet Kune Do.
But it's actually safe to say that any art could, hurt JKD in certain ways if you overcomplicate the drills that you're teaching. Especially for people who've never done it before. Like I've gone to seminars, or even when I hosted a seminar where, um, like Guru Dan is teaching some sort of stick progression with people who've never done stick before.
Mm-hmm.
It blows their minds, and not in a good way. They're like, "Oh my god, I just spent $400 to be here,
Yeah.
and I don't have a clue of what's going on." Right?
Yeah.
And for me, I think
Mm.
seminars are for exposure, but if you really want to learn the art, you should seek the person out or seek some of their students out to train with.
Yes.
And I think, for me, even when I teach seminars, I keep it simple.
Yeah. Because look, seminars are not for learning. Seminars are for exposure,
Hmm.
right? You can't teach. The story is that Inasano's first international seminar in England in '79, I think,
Hmm.
right? It was like 100 people. 100 people with like karate backgrounds. Well, how are you going to teach Jeet Kune Do to people who have no idea? And how are you going to teach it? See, you cannot teach Jeet Kune Do in 1979 to 100 people in England the same way you run your 12-person Jeet Kune Do class in Torrance, California. You see? Now you have a phase one class that has 20 people in it, a phase two class, a phase three class, 30 people in it. But you also at your school have a private, smaller Jeet Kune Do class where the approach to training is completely different. You cannot replicate that with 100 people in England. Doesn't work that way.
Well, especially back then when traditionally you're taught very, very different from now, and
Yeah.
people's
Yeah.
ideology was very, very different.
Yes. Yes. Right. So after a while, I started to actually. It wasn't after a while. It was during my first 2 weeks, my first camp, and it was because of Paul Vunak. Because Paul wasn't on the curriculum. He was curriculum. He wasn't on the teaching roster, right, for that camp, but
Hmm.
he was there and he was assisting. And then in the evenings, you would have demonstrations. So um, Paul did a demonstration, but instead of him with his assistants demonstrating while we sat, he turned it into a little training session. And so um, So let's see if I can remember. So it's like, okay, so your partner jabs at you and you catch, right? So you start there. Then he throws the cross. So you catch the jab, and now you do the inward gunting on the cross. Then you catch the jab, you do the inward gunting, and you throw the back fist, right? Then you catch the jab, you do the inward gunting, you throw the back fist, he parries it, and you lopsow and back fist him again. And I noticed what he was doing. He was just adding on, adding on, adding on. Now me, I'm writing down every time he adds on, I try to write everything from the beginning, right? Jab versus this, whatever. And then I realized, no. He's just adding on at the end. So just write the ending part, because on line one, you have the opening. And that's how I develop seminar language. So the jab, it's jab versus catch. But on the given end, it's jab to cross. So the conjunctions, versus and to, tell you if you're person A, the feeder, or person B, the receiver. And that became my seminar language. So now I'm able to write notes in seminar like this. After 40 years, I finally gained a little bit of ability.
Kind of like shorthand.
Yeah. Yeah. Right? Now,
All right.
what
Awesome. All right.
what did that
Question.
Oh, right. That was about
Right.
hurting the public, right? See, so one of the other things to consider is that Inosano was sharing what he had access to. And for a lot of people, what Inosano was sharing was gold. But what a lot of people didn't understand is the structure behind what he was sharing. And so they ended up thinking that, well, this is Jeet Kune Do, and it's a mix, right? That it didn't really have a center or what have you. And so now I have to fix that.
What do you think the state of Jeet Kune Do is now?
Um, I think it is best summarized in something that my senior Chris Kent says. Jeet Kune Do, the art of the art caught in an identity crisis, right? Because we've been carrying on this endless debate since at least 1993, and that's where and when and how, let's just say in the 90s, the endless debate between original and concepts started. So it's an identity crisis for 30 years or more. That's the state that it's in. You differ? You beg to differ?
No, no. Hey, listen. I think a lot of martial arts have entered the disco stage of their lives, where it's it's very flashy and it's pretty, but it's lost its functionality in many ways. Right?
Yeah,
Or people have forgotten the functionality behind it, or they don't want to make it functional because it makes them have to be honest with themselves.
yeah. Well, yeah, and it depends on where they're coming from, what's their source, right, of information slash instruction. Look. So, for example, if you train with a guy who is under a guy who is under a guy who is under Inosano, who is under Bruce Lee, you are what, three or four people removed from Bruce Lee. So you're three or four people removed from the source, right? Now, If I whisper something to you about Dean, by the time I finish telling it to you and you go tell it to Dean, it might have changed. I could whisper to you, I think Dean is doing a fantastic job, right? And by the time you get to him, you say, Dwight said that you're doing, and you use a word starting with the letter F, but it's the opposite of a fantastic job. So now here we have a guy, and he could be a very ardent student, but he's 4 or 5 people removed from Bruce Lee. How much filtering, right, has gone on before
Oh
it
hell
gets
yeah.
to him? You see? So
Well,
if
there's a lot of regurgitation, and I think
mhm,
that's the problem. And
mhm,
there's not a lot of digestion. Like one of the things I really enjoy doing, like, I love doing hubad. To me, it's just a fantastic drill.
mhm,
And whenever I do a seminar, it doesn't matter where it is. Like I think the last one I did when I was in Finland, I found a guy who's a JKD guy out there, and I'm like, "You do hubad?" And he's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Let's play around a little bit." And it was cool to see how different it was. But you can kind of tell who people train with by their structure as well, right?
yeah, yeah,
So for me, that's the cool thing. I belong to a group of people that luckily. There might be a separation of who you train with, but in the end, with the Daw brothers, I find that it doesn't matter if you mistrain something because you have to fight in the end to actually make sure it works.
mhm,
Um, but I find that's kind of been lost with some of the other martial arts and groups that are out there.
yeah, because like you said, putting it on the line. Um, some people are just not interested in that.
No.
So they're interested in the collection of techniques, right? Versus the whittling down as to, well, what techniques do you actually need?
Hey, listen, like I always find it funny when people like they kind of shit on karate and stuff like that. But you look at karate guys from the '70s; those guys are monsters. Like they,
Yeah,
they knew how to scrap and they fought hard.
yeah, yeah.
And you look at
We
some of those old videos and you compare it to the stuff you're seeing now, and you're like, what happened? Who got
right.
off on the wrong bus stop?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, right? So we know that Bruce Lee had a thing with the classical arts, right, and the
Mhm.
classical approach, and he was like, you know, those guys train in an unrealistic manner and whatever. I maybe you know the kata might have been fancy or whatever, but my understanding is that, like you just said, Renee, those guys could scrap. So Bruce Lee might not have been 100% correct in being dismissive towards traditional training en masse. You know what I mean? He might not have been correct.
I would agree. I would say that I think sometimes you can't dismiss the entire organization or the entire thing. You have to still have to have the structure and the respect and everything else.
Mhm.
When you throw all that to the wind, I think that's when it allows for like charlatans out there to make up whatever the hell they want.
Yeah,
I think
there
that's
is
that's
that.
the mistake that was made.
Yeah. Again, because but Bruce Lee was a product of his generation. So he, in the '60s, it's all anti this and anti that, right? In fact, in the 1980s, in the early to mid 1980s, I remember being told, whatever, this is in regards to running a school, right?
Mhm.
Whatever the Taekwondo people are doing, you want to do the opposite. Okay. All right. Yeah, because we're Jeet Kune Do. We're non-classical, right? We're hip and cool and whatever. So whatever they're doing, we're going to do the opposite. Except they were making more money than I was.
Yeah, well, I remember like back in the late '80s, early '90s, just people who were teaching Jeet Kune Do who were never certified in any kind of art by anybody. So Bruce just said, you can do whatever you want, right? Like the interpretation of what he said was being used for people just to open up schools
Yeah,
and say they were teaching Jeet Kune Do with they've never trained with a Jeet Kune Do person.
yeah. Well, so maybe that whole, like we were talking about earlier, Dean, that whole idea about freedom, right, wasn't as sophisticated as he thought or we thought. Maybe you
Well,
do need some kind of structure to what you're doing.
there's the artistic freedom, and then there's the I think that's maybe more of what maybe it was meant. And again, I don't know. I never
Yeah,
knew. I didn't know Bruce,
yeah. But I
but
mean, but remember, a lot of people became attracted to Jeet Kune Do with the publication of his essay "Liberate Yourself from Classical Karate." That was the turning point for a lot of people. You see, so it's that idea. Classical karate has no value. You want to liberate yourself from that. That's Bruce Lee spouting, um, aphorisms or what have you from that generation. Okay, the kids across the bay from Oakland and San Francisco, they were liberating themselves from the classical way of living in America, right? Family and kids and job and work and all that stuff. Nah, time to what was the slogan? Um, um, check in and check out. No, something and check out. I'm not from that era, and I didn't live in Haight Ashbury, so I don't. It was
oh,
like
was it the tune in, turn
tune
off, and
in to and check out, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's a revolution. Bruce Lee's revolution was in the martial art world. Okay, we train with shoes on. We don't wear the gi with the belt because belts are good for holding your pants up, right? We play music when we train. We hit stuff. We don't hit the air, right? And we don't do the no contact sparring. We put boxing gloves on and baseball shin gear, right? And body armor from like kendo or something, and we hit each other.
See, which nobody told me that when Dean came to my house and he came to my basement and we're just like playing around and he just started beating on me like I owed him money.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
I wish he would have told me I
Yeah.
should be wearing some sort of gear.
Yep. Yeah. Well, again, like I said, that's what those kind of people, right? Those kind of people. It's like you got to be very, very careful. That's why, right? I was gonna go do this interview in his office, but I was like, Renee told me don't trust him,
No,
so I
don't trust
stayed
it.
here. Yeah.
Listen, anybody who has a pair of blinds that are ripped to rat shit and doesn't care, because they're peeking through those all the time. You got to be careful.
Lies, lies, lies.
That's the Italian in him, right? It's like
Oh my god. Who came up with the name Marshall Meh?
Renee,
Right? Okay. But explain to me what it's like. Is that
exactly.
okay?
That's
that's
exactly it.
Renee.
Okay.
You know what? I
Eh.
think I, I probably say that about 100 times a day, and especially for some of the, because for me it's hilarious, because
Yeah.
someone takes themselves really seriously and post like some crazy video, and I'll go meh,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
and for me I just don't care, and I'm a very jaded martial arts instructor or practitioner, and with everybody taking themselves so seriously, I think it's just time. When Dean asked me if we wanted to do this, I just kind of threw the name out there, just
Mhm.
because it's like, whatever. We'll interview anybody. Like,
Right. Yeah.
and for me, this is not an interview. This is just a chat. And again, I don't know if you notice, I'm a little opinionated, Um, but for me, it's just like I'm not here to make friends.
Right.
Not necessarily. I'm here to have a conversation about martial arts
Yep.
and any martial art for that matter.
Yep. Yep.
And then when the Master Dean Franco said that he was okay with the name, it was good. I have to call him Master Dean. That's what he wants me to call him.
Yeah.
Okay.
So many titles we put on me.
What about Datu Dean? That would be a little bit of
Yeah, oh
alliteration.
my God.
Oh man, that would be you know what? We probably we
That's
pissed so many people
bad,
off with that.
bad.
I, I actually kind of like it. I kind of
Okay.
like it actually.
Okay. All right. But yeah, Dean, you would be the perfect person. Now, I started seeing the title Suro, Suro. Is that is that like the S from Sifu and then the URO from
SU.
Guru? So it's a person who teaches like JKD and Filipino martial art, and they're called Suro. Is that what that is,
I
or is it just a
that's
misspelling? Is
I
is the G next to the S on the keyboard? No,
No, it's not. So I
it's
would
not.
get if I had to guess, I have not seen that coming through FMA discussion. If I had to guess, perhaps a misspelling,
Okay.
perhaps. I
Which
mean,
is
Okay.
weird because in Spain we call those people putos.
and the lovely contribution from
And
one
on that
Jamaican.
note, okay, moving along.
Yeah, yes. All right. Next question. Can a student get good at both Conley JKD under the same roof, or is one always going to dominate?
Yeah, you can. Um, so because right, see, if I have if I have a stick in my hand, right, I can hit on a diagonal with it, and there's a certain point at which the movement of my arm is very similar to my punching. Okay, it's not identical, but it's similar because in both instances I have to extend my arm. So the movements are connected. They're not identical, but they're connected. So if I realize that when I'm training, that I'm training more than one thing, okay, then if I'm able to maintain that idea, yeah, I can use one to inform the other. So that's why here in Miami, we say, in regards to Kali, the stick is the training method for itself because there is a thing known as stick fighting, but the stick is also the training method for the blade and for some aspects of empty hands. Now, when it comes to Jeet Kune Do, we say that Jeet Kune Do is Bruce Lee's martial art and martial philosophy, which espouses well roundedness. And well roundedness as a martial artist means you have to train in empty hands and you have to train in weaponry. So for me, I sometimes that's why I'm lucky that I have my own group where I can speak without having to edit what I say. So over on the I Love Jeet Kune Do group, I'll never post anything that is Kali oriented because I know that people will be upset. Now, I'm like Renee. I don't care, but I also don't care to engage them in it. To me, there is no there's distinction, but there's not differentiation. Kali training is not exactly the same thing as Jeet Kune Do training and vice versa. But for me as a martial artist, they complement each other. They're not antagonistic. So I think it is possible to get good at both of them. The same way that I was good at French, Spanish, Latin, and English in high school. Okay? Because at one point you realize, oh, wait, the Latin word for window
Okay. Ooh,
is fenestra. The French word for window is fenetra. And the Spanish went off in some direction and came up with ventana. But you see the connection
okay.
between the three languages. So you're not confused because you're educated about it and you're able to appreciate these things have some things in common, and then they
Hmm.
have and then in some areas maybe they go off on a tangent or what have you. But your brain is not fried because you're studying four languages. No,
You're right. Right.
right? So it's
We
so
got a
yeah,
question
you
from
can study.
Kevin. We got a question from Kevin Cooper. Sifu Dwight, seeing as you have interviewed so many instructors from both sides, what is the biggest misconception that JKD and JKDC have about each other? So OJKD versus
Aha.
JKDC have about each
Okay. Well, we've talked about that already. I think that a big misconception that the original JKD people have about Jeet Kune Do concepts, and I laugh because to me it's ridiculous, right? Um, the original people think that, well, they think a lot of things, but one major thing that they think is that Jeet Kune Do concepts is Inasano's version of Jeet Kune Do. That it's a new thing. It's a new approach to Jeet Kune Do, and it's an approach that has little or nothing to do with Bruce Lee. Jeet Kune Do concepts, right, is Silat and Muay Thai and Savat and BJJ and whatever else it is that you find on the back of an Inasano t-shirt, all the different arts and whatever. That's what Jeet Kune Do concepts is. So it's a different approach to Jeet Kune Do. Okay? The Jeet Kune Do concepts people, and again, I laugh because I'm forced to use this language because the question is is presented that way. But for myself, there's nothing, no original Jeet Kune Do, and there is nothing Jeet Kune Do concepts. There's Jeet Kune Do, and that's it, right? But a big misconception that the Jeet Kune Do concepts people might have is that original Jeet Kune Do is not well rounded because they don't do a lot of different stuff. So they're using a few, a small number of tools for every job that's out there. And so they're not prepared for the different types of jobs because they don't have the different types of tools. You see? And that is somewhat of a misconception because the people who are I'll use the numbers that I've seen. The people who are using one stance, three kicks, and five punches. Okay, if they're training it the right way, they're making sure that that one stance, three kicks, and five punches will work against somebody who can kick, punch, trap, grapple, attack them with a blunt weapon or an edge weapon. They're making sure, and they're doing it honestly and realistically. They're making sure that the one stance, three kicks, and five punches can do every job that they might come across. Okay, so
No,
again, to each his own.
absolutely.
So if you're happy
Um,
with that and you are making sure that it works, then who am I to say, oh well, you need to expand your toolbox. And you're like, no, man, no matter what it is that comes at me, my one stance, three kicks, and five punches, right? And my mobility, okay, I can handle it. Doesn't matter what it is. And I've trained it that way. Then fine. I'm not going to argue with him. Okay. It's up to him to know whether or not he's being honest. Now, another guy, if he goes, oh man, Savat's got some awesome kicks. Oh man, the Silat has got some awesome takedowns. But he's not training it in a way, right, that stresses simplicity and directness, right, and effectiveness because he's doing the same thing. That Savat stuff, that Silat stuff, does it help you against somebody who can kick and punch and trap and grapple and attack you with an edge weapon or a blunt weapon? So it's all in how and what are you training. But if you're just like, uh, you know, collecting techniques and and being fancy and looking cool and being able to talk about, oh, no way is way, right? And my limitation is no limitation, so I train in everything and whatever. Yeah, I mean, and you could be inspired. You could be inspired to do that because of Dan Inosanto, because he trains with everybody that he gets a chance to train with. You just got to remember, you're not Dan Inosanto, okay? And his reasons for training everything that he trains are his reasons. And what I've heard from people who know him really well is that an important guiding principle for him is could be summed up in the phrase "we are all one," right? A pluribus unum, that type of thing. Okay, so that's why you will hear him say something like, "Well, Kali comes from Kamai, the hand, Katawan, the body, and Lihok, motion." So Kali is the art of, this is how we talk about it in Miami. Kali is the art of understanding hand and body motion with or without a weapon. But that's because I participate somewhat in that idea that we are all one, right? In the old days, my early days with Asano, I did a demonstration. I'd been with Asano for 2 years and did demonstration in Barbados. And long story short, I could see in the crowd, I knew this section of the crowd was from this school, this school, this school, this school. And this was part of my demonstration. What do you guys call this technique? High block. What do you call it? Head block. What do you call it? Upper block. What do you call it? Upward block. Same technique, different names, right? The important thing is that technique the most efficient way to handle when somebody tees off at your head? That's what Jeet Kune Do brings to the table. The analysis of the movement. Well, that's what Kali is based on a lot. The analysis of the movement. So in that way, to answer to add on to your earlier question, that's how for me they complement each other. But people who want to be lazy, intellectually lazy, and just hurl criticisms at the other group, or even think in terms of there being two groups. So you start a Facebook group called Jeet Kune Do, Concepts versus Original. Well, the second that you start such a group, I know or I believe you're invested, right, in dissension. So I'm going to antagonize you because I'm not invested in that. My investment is in the promotion and the promulgation and the perpetuation of Jeet Kune Do. I happen to be. That's interesting. What's the topic of this live session? You having
Yes.
no topic as topic.
JKD. No, having no topic
Having
is
no
topic.
topic. Yeah, having no topic as topic.
Oh my god!
Right?
Oh my god! Where's the show? No topic. That's gonna be classic. All right, here. I'm gonna get to the next question and then I gotta bring Renee up. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. How do you know when Kali training is actually complementing your JKD versus replacing it?
That's it can't, right? It can't. Because what would be the purpose of one replacing the other? Right? When my approach is based on them complementing each other. Right? So it's like, well, why do you do this in Kali? Okay? Because look, you know how okay, so here's a good one for you, right? Okay. Double stick. What is the 8 times 8 equals 64 formula? What is that about?
Go ahead, Dean.
The formula?
Yeah. What is the 8 times 8 equals 64? What is that formula about?
Actually, Dean explained this to me in detail the other day, so I'm actually looking forward to this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Renee, are you answering it?
No, I
Renee,
said,
you're
I said
saying
go
you're
for it.
sleeping now.
Come on, man. This is classic.
What is
This is
going on with
classic
this?
1980s Paul Vunak at the whiteboard stuff.
What is he still here? What happened?
No? Nothing?
Oh, you're back.
You got nothing?
So this is when like one train leaves at 5 o'clock
What?
and the other train leaves at 7.
Right? Okay. So obviously, you guys are a lot younger than I am. right? So you don't, okay. So this is what it is, right? This is what it is. Inward backhand, backhand, right? Now, we have what? High, 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 known as heaven six, right? High, low, high, known as standard six, right? Um, high, high, low, 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 high, low, high, high, low, and I always mess up one of them. But you have 8 possibilities between high and low. So if I start on the right hand with high, 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 and then on the left hand, high, 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 that's line 1. But if I start high, low, high on the right hand, but I change and go back to number 1 on the left hand, now I'm not doing 1 1, I'm doing 2 1. And I go through that, I end up with 64 patterns. 8 times 8, 64 patterns. Okay? Well, here's how you apply that in JKD. Oh, 3 count. Okay? High, high, high. That's jab, cross, hook. High, low, high. That's jab, cross to the body, hook the head. Right? High, high, low. That's hit the head, now hook the body. Uppercut the body, whatever, whatever. So that's one informing the other. So I'm using them complementarily. They're not they're not in opposition to each other. I can use that same idea. I take high and low and I turn high into punch and low into kick. Now I have a new structure. High, high, high is punch, punch, punch. But high, high, low is punch, punch, kick. Low, low, low is 3 kicks. Low, high, low is kick, punch, kick. And whatever, and whatever, and whatever. So I'm using one to help me with the other. So I'm not confused, right? And nothing is replacing anything else. One is helping me to develop ideas and training methods and what have you for the other. And Renee is scratching his head because
No. I'm just
I've completely lost.
I don't know. You lost me a long time ago, but I have a question for you. Of course, I'm kidding. Um, I have a question for you,
Yeah.
and I bring this up with a lot of JKD people, especially people who've been around as long as you have, just because I have a curiosity about it, and it's kind of been like a myth of things that I've heard over the years. Did Guru Dan or is anybody else that you're training ever taught you about like Nova? Because I keep hearing like this myth that Bruce is working on this art called Nova.
The only thing I have heard about Nova is it's out of Seattle, if I remember correctly,
Hmm.
right? It's out of Seattle and it has something to do, but I could be dead wrong about all this. It's out of Seattle and it may or may not have had something to do with Jesse Glover's little brother, Michael,
Hmm.
but I could be dead wrong. I could be dead wrong, but I've heard about this before, but I don't know anything about Bruce working on some special Nova thing or what have you.
Okay.
I don't know personally. No. Okay.
If you're not allowed to tell me, that's fine. Just blink twice and let me.
No,
I don't know
right,
about
unlike
Nova.
unlike what a lot of my detractors will tell you, right?
Mhm.
I actually do not believe that I know everything. I actually don't.
Okay.
Right. So, um,
He lives in Las Vegas.
um,
Most talented student at Seattle.
okay.
All right. Sorry. Who lives in Las Vegas?
So that's Michael Lee. Right.
Yeah, Powell he's out of lives in Las Vegas as Seattle. Um,
Okay. Although, the other thing that I heard is that the Michael Lee, because I trained 2 sessions with a Michael Lee in Seattle in 1980. But apparently there are two Michael Lees. There are two different Michael Lees, one of whom is or was Jesse Glover's little brother, and the other one is not. Um, but I don't know for sure because I don't know everything. So yeah, so I've heard of Nova, and in fact, I think Bill Hurst out of
Yeah.
Vancouver might know something about it.
Is he in Vancouver or in Ottawa?
Well, look, anything north of Minnesota, I don't care. Okay, it's all the same thing to me.
And you're in Miami, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Shit, I wish I would have known.
I
I
got
was there
two
just a few months
different.
ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
One's in Chicago.
Oh, okay. When are you coming back?
When I get a job.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I just
yeah.
I'm currently unemployed.
Okay, that'll help.
Yeah. Dean made a few calls to the Canadian government.
Yeah,
Next thing I know,
yeah.
unemployed.
Well, it's, that's how he
Yeah.
rolls, as the cool kids say.
You have no idea. You have
Yeah,
no idea.
right.
So, anyways, getting back to high, low, high.
Yeah, right. So this is okay. So now here's the thing, right? And my good friend Ron Reagan and I talk about this all the time. So that 8 times 8, right? 8 on the left side, 8 on the right side gives you 64 possibilities. So on seminar, in class, or whatever, you will hear Dan and Asano say, when it comes to double stick, there's 4,096 possibilities, right? And he said that one day, and I'm like, 4,096. And I'm like, okay, how did he come up with that? And I'm thinking about it for months and months and months. And it never occurred to me. Here's what he did. I worked this out only last week, right? Because I'm real slow. I was good at languages in high school, but I failed all the sciences and math. Okay? Right? There is 8 possibilities of high and low, but there are also 8 possibilities of inward and backhand. You with me? You want to get a piece of paper and write that out there, Renee?
Hey, listen, I'll tell you right now. When it comes to backhands, most Spanish and Italian parents are really good with those.
I know. That's what I've heard. That's what I've heard. Right.
And I learned that at a very young age.
Okay. Yeah. Right. So that's what Inosano did. It's the 64 times 64. That's the 4,096. Right. That's the math behind it. So he says that. Right. Now, you got to know. Okay. I love him to death. But the next time he says that, I'm going to raise my hand, right? And humbly and politely challenge him on it. Okay? Because there's infinitely more than 4,096. The 64 times 64 is accurate. But that's just if I'm training with you guys. That's just us standing in front of each other, not moving. The second that you add advancing and retreating footwork, the number changes. Then you add moving left and right, the number changes. Then you add female triangle, advance and retreat, the number changes. Then you add male triangle, advance and retreat, the number changes. Then you add circling counterclockwise, circling clockwise, the number changes.
So what you're saying is that the number changes.
I'm saying, guess what? The number changes, right? So, but again, after 40 years, I understand what he's saying when he says there's 4,096 possibilities. I, I'm, 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 I'm the inventor of a thing called Inasano Speak. I'm the world's top translator of Inasano Speak.
I think the big thing for me is like I get it. There's all these possibilities, but how many do you actually use in your fighting?
Inward backhand, backhand.
You know, it's like there's like 64 attacks in PTK, but
Right.
it's usually 5 that are used.
Right. Yeah. It's like our good friend Bert Richardson has said many times, right? Inasana will show you all this stuff, right? All these cool disarms and whatever, whatever, right? But then he also says, but I would just hit him in the hand. You know? So he just showed you, right? 5 things.
Yeah.
And then
For that
whispers,
story, yeah.
right? And then whispers, yeah, but I would just hit him in the hand. Okay? That's Inasano doing what he knows he should do in terms of giving people the possibilities, okay, but also informing them of the probabilities. If we go back to that whole idea about seminar, okay, if you just give people, okay, let me rephrase it. Let me phrase it a different way. There are people who will be happy with 1 stance, 3 kicks, and 5 punches, and nothing but that. And then there are people who will not be happy with that. And then there are people who can teach that, but they think people are not going to be happy with that. And so their seminar presentation system goes beyond 1 stance, 3 kicks, and 5 punches, because their belief is that people will not be happy with that. Now, part of their belief might also be that that cannot answer every situation that might come up. So I am going to put more into my seminar presentation system. But then there are people who are like, nah, that's all I have to do. That's all I got to show. Okay, and and both of those people with those different approaches to their seminar presentation systems, both of them will have fans, and both of them will have detractors. But none of them who have fans will have as many fans as Dean Franco has on OnlyFans.
Yeah. You know, I think it's great to do a deep dive on martial arts and like really analyze what you're training in. But I think that's where also you have to start becoming more honest with the people that you're training with and say, hey, listen, like this is fight oriented, but here we're getting into theoretical stuff and not make that a gospel for combat. Because I sometimes I hear people talking about, you know, there's 7,000, you know, angles that you can do, but you'll never the likelihood of you using it is very minimal.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'm making myself clear there.
yeah. Well, so again, take the 64 things that I talked about, right? Okay. Well, I don't know of anybody who ever said, okay, in this class, all we're going to do is the 64, whatever, right? I don't, no, I'm not talking about the 64 attacks of Pikiti Tertia, right? I'm talking about the inward backhand stuff, right, and the high low stuff. Because after a while, you start realizing, yeah, that one's cool, but that, as Damian Marley would say, that na make it, right? Because there's stuff that works like immediately. There's stuff that works almost immediately. There's stuff that you got to work hard at making work. And then there's stuff that you work hard at making it work. And ultimately, you got to let it go because it doesn't work for you. And that's it. That's the four quadrants. That now for me that's a Kali thing, right? Um, Again, because of high and low and inward and backhand, um, because of the Escala, because of the centerline theory, right? All that type of stuff. I have a thing where a lot of things in well, a fair amount of things in my life are broken down into fours for my digestion and for my understanding, right? So that's a little tangent there about that four thing.
So, hey, do you think? I think there's a two. I got 7 questions left.
You're breaking up again. I didn't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think this merits a part two. I have 7 or 8 questions left, and we're coming up on 2 hours.
Oh, okay. Um, I'm in town next Wednesday. If you want to do part two next Wednesday, if you don't have anybody scheduled as yet.
Um, but I want to do it sooner than later, not to lose the essence of like what you're talking about. Again, I got like 7 or 8. I mean, unless you want to go, it's up to you. I mean, but we're like, there's in other words, we got through half the questions.
Yeah. Um, well, let's go until 9.
Let's go to 9. Okay, let's do it.
Yeah,
Okay, so
let's
we're
go
gonna go to
until 9.
9. Here's the next question.
Okay.
Okay. Well, you know what? Let's do this because I want to bring you back on, finish the list of questions. But here's the question. You run a big group. I love Taekwondo, right? And you get some polarizing figures in there. I've seen it. I can tell you, and putting out. Well, I was putting out a fire.
I hate to tell you this.
Then
You
that
got
kind of it's been on all pilot every once in a while.
I didn't get any of that.
Nothing. What is going on? I mean, can you hear me okay now?
Okay, I hear you fine now. Yeah. So stay in that position and
Okay. So
so
no,
I
I mean
heard polarizing
you run the group.
figures.
I love Taekwondo.
Yes. Like kind of.
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
like for instance, I just tell you my experience of a discussion. I mean, like if you're not going in there and I mean, name calling and all that, I question you. I'm more on the conservative end. In other words, if someone calling me a name that's 100 miles away, it's uncalled for, I read them. I guess how do you handle like discussions that just go south or just complete disrespect?
Well, I so I'm going to answer based on the snippets, right, that I got for your question, but I think I got the gist of it. So I don't censor a whole lot of people because I think that it's better to let people do their thing, and then others can go, oh, this guy is a jackass, right? So now everybody sees it, as opposed to me, because I don't get paid to be a moderator on a Facebook group. So why am I gonna be every morning I wake up and go to Facebook and now I gotta moderate? Oh, you can't say that to that guy. Oh, next time this and that. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna be banning you because you didn't this and that. What? What? We're all grown ass adults.
Some of us.
Sorry. Some of us are grown ass adults. Okay. So I'm not in that. So it's like the whole, better to stay silent than open your mouth and be thought a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt.
Well,
Right. So
didn't
I let
Mark
him.
Twain say that? Didn't Mark Twain say never argue with an idiot because they'll drag you down to their level and win by
Yeah.
experience?
Yeah. Right. So to me, it's partially an exercise in, it's an extension of a Napoleon Hill principle. So the Napoleon Hill principle is accurate thinking. The extension that I applied in my life is accurate speaking, because to me, one engenders the other. If I can think accurately, then I should develop the ability to express myself accurately based on that accurate thought. So when I go online, what's the challenge? The challenge is there's no intonation in what you type. So if Renee types something, okay, see, now I don't even have to finish my statement. You see? Okay. But the people who don't know you well are going to think whatever. Well, you don't really have any control over that. And in Penjak Silat, right? See, Paul de Tours teaches you what? You are the director, he is the directee. You ever heard that phrase?
Oh,
Yeah. Okay. So if I am letting some moron on Facebook control how I feel and what I do, then I'm not the director. So I'm violating Penjak Silat principles. And I can't live with myself doing that.
I'm more of the prodigy fire starter. You know, the first lyric is "I'm the fire starter, punk and instigator."
Ah, well, here that I did a podcast about that, right? Okay, and you know what? This is a good segue. Accurate thinking. You ready?
Hmm.
Tell me and tell me honestly what you think about this. Um, it's very romantic, let's call it, to talk about, oh, we are keepers of the Jeet Kune Do flame, right? The descendants of the master. We are keepers of the flame. Okay? Hell no. Better to be a Jeet Kune Do fire starter, because Bruce Lee was not a keeper of the Wing Chun flame. Bruce Lee went out and started his own fire. So if you are a true descendant of Bruce Lee, it ain't no I'm keeping the flame, right? No, 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 no. You learn to start your own fires, right? Now, you know what you do, you should know this because it was filmed in Canada. Quest for Fire. You know that movie?
Or it's Daryl Hannah.
No. That's Cavemen of the Clan something. Quest for Fire is a similar looking movie, but it starred Ray Don Chong, Rupert Everett, and no, Rupert something, and Everett McGee. Oh shoot, Dwight, I'm getting so old. But it's a um, Francois Arnaud, a French filmmaker, but they filmed it in Canada.
Okay.
Anyhow, this is the basic idea. There's one tribe. and they keep the flame. Literally, they have embers in a gourd. And so every night, right, they blow on it. They put an ember into the wood pile, right, and fan it, and they build a fire every night. Okay,
Yep.
when it gets cold. Well, they get attacked by another tribe, and the guy who's carrying the gourd with the embers falls in the swamp. So they go out. The embers go out. So now that's the quest for fire. So they're going to send out the three top warriors to find fire. So along the way, they meet different tribes at different periods, in different periods of sophistication and evolution and what have you. And ultimately, they come across this tribe. This tribe is so cool. They don't walk barefooted. They have taken, they have formed shoes, right, out of the hides of the animals that they kill. So they have leather shoes. They also don't live in caves. They live in huts. They also set up their village surrounded by quicksand. So people don't know, and that's how their village doesn't get attacked. They also have invented beer. So they have wild parties. And they also they don't use throwing weapons. They have a projectile weapon.
I know the
These
movie, but Daryl Hannah was in that movie.
No, she wasn't. You're confusing Daryl Hannah, a white girl, with Ray Don Chong, a black girl. Daryl Hannah was in a movie called Clan of the Cavemen or something like that, right? And she wore fur. That's why you're confused.
She was in
Okay.
the movie.
Oh my God. Dean, we should turn this into a money thing, right? So anyhow, so that tribe, the crux of the movie is when
Yeah.
they come back to the cave with a couple of people from that tribe, and the guy sits down and takes the kindling out of his pouch, right? Sits down there, Clan of the Cave Beer. That's what it's called. That's the Daryl Hannah movie. But anyhow, so the guy sits down and then he starts doing the thing and he creates fire. So I was thinking about what is that? Yeah, right. See, Clan of the Cave Bear. Right? So
There
I
you go.
was thinking about that movie one time and I go, that is a podcast episode. Don't be a Jeet Kune Do keeper of the flame. Follow Bruce Lee's example and be a Jeet Kune Do fire starter. So,
I always find it funny that
I like it.
eventually martial artists all become some sort of philosophers on life and everything else. It's like it kind of drives me crazy a little bit.
why?
And the one thing I liked about Daryl Hannah in that movie is when she taught everybody else how to make fire.
Right.
It was
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a great movie. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And shout out to Daryl Hannah. See if we can get her on the show. It should be great.
You should. You definitely should. Um, but yeah, I'm trying to think what other non martial art movies had that kind of an impact on me. That it, right, but it just gave me that idea because again, not again, but the philosophy thing that you just mentioned, Renee. That's one thing to me that sets Jeet Kune Do apart. Like I find that there are other martial arts and other martial artists, they have to go somewhere outside of their art to find the philosophy. I think Jeet Kune Do, because of Bruce Lee's background as a student of philosophy, Jeet Kune Do has philosophy built into it. So you don't have
I'm
to go outside of it.
okay. I'll agree with you on that. I think my issue is when I've been to people's classes, and then all of a sudden they want to get philosophical about Jeet Kune Do and what Bruce Lee said, and they'll speak like this because Bruce really liked his eggs over easy, but what does that mean in life? It's like just like
Right.
be quiet,
Yeah.
just like,
Well,
and I
no,
laugh at people like it
no.
drives me,
Okay. All right.
you know. What I mean?
Dean, watch what the experiment that you and I were talking about before Renee came on. Okay, Renee, ask me a question about Bruce Lee or Jeet Kune Do. Anything. First thing that comes to mind.
How did Bruce Lee like his eggs?
Well, I'll tell you this, my friend. Be water. Be water, my friend.
Drinking water when eating eggs is a good idea. Yes.
See? That's it. That's the answer to every question about Bruce Lee and Jeet Kune Do. What was his favorite technique? Be water, my friend. Don't I sound real smart?
You sound like the world's most interesting man.
Ta-da! Right? Yeah,
Hey, listen, the next time I'm in Miami, I'm gonna come check you out.
for sure, man. Right? I got a small group. We meet outdoors in the park, you know, and we spend hours philosophizing about Bruce Lee.
Nice.
We don't even sweat.
That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
As long as, yeah, just if it's a park, it's cool. That way I can bring my kids too. They can run around.
Okay. Although I did go looking at a spot that used to be a workout place. I drove by there because I heard that they closed. So I'm toying with the idea of going back into a building.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah. But we'll see. We'll see.
Well, you're in Florida. It's like the weather there is amazing.
Oh man, my friend Jacques up in, I forget where in Canada Jacques is, but he's like, it's 104 in Canada, and I'm like, Canada, the Great Frozen North is
Oh, I get.
104, right? You know what it was in Miami today? 86. I mean, we had rain, but it was still 86, and I think when the rain stopped, it went up to 91. Because
The weather in Canada can be unpredictable. It's kind of like
yeah,
my ex. It's just like one day, one, one day it's cold. You
yep,
have no idea. It's just no.
yeah.
You have no idea what you're getting here.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Franco, it's 9:02. We said we'd go until 9. So any famous last words?
So, I'm gonna heat salt here too. No, I like to do it too. Okay, with you, like it's like about half. We got half the questions.
Okay. Yeah, I'm good. Just reach out and let me know.
That's
I'm
cool
on
with
the
you.
road. Yeah, I'm on the road this weekend, but I'm back home. I'm back home either Sunday night or Monday morning. So, if next Wednesday works for you, I'm good.
Okay, I'll actually. So, but yeah, it'll be tough. I'll get it done sooner than later. But yeah, absolutely.
Renee, we'll pretend we heard what he said and we understood it.
I think Dean's right about that. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
if
Yep.
you just
Yep. Sounds
you,
good to me too.
you just got to peel it before you eat it. That's
All right.
Right? Just be sure where it came from.
that's right. That's right.
Right? Yep.
So I think it's a
All
good
right.
idea.
All right, guys.
Okay. Next time, here's my
Thank you,
suggestion.
Sifu.
Here's my suggestion. Laptop, headset, wired, you know, one internet connection. Run it. But what do I know?
Sounds good.
I
All right,
will.
Dwight. Pleasure
Okay,
meeting
man.
you.
Same
I'll
here.
try. Wrong. There's Roman. But,
Deep, send me the
okay,
raw video. Send
guys.
me the raw video, and I'll edit it for you.
Yeah. All right. I'll be in
Okay.
touch.
All right. Take care. Have a good night, guys.
I,
I got what's going on here. Like last week was perfect.
I wonder if he's right by having if you have your computer and your cell phone on at the same time.
I know, but I had it on last week with John.
Hmm.
I don't know. I don't know. I gotta figure it out though. But if we don't get the Jousters on next week, we can certainly bring
Hmm.
him back on for part 2.
Sounds good to me.
All right. I'll be in touch tomorrow.
All right. Catch you later.
All right. All right, folks, that wraps up. Yes, so we're supposed to have Jousters on next week, but I'm not sure. They haven't confirmed. Jousting should be kind of interesting. So if they don't come on, fair to say I'll just bring Sifu Dwight back on, finish out part 2. FMA discussion might be an episode Friday afternoon. Yeah, 2 guys, early guys on Modern Niece. So, but I'll know that pretty soon. But like always, you will see it pinned, featured in FMA discussion, definitely. So you can check it out there. So there'll be plenty of notification on that. And I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah, it was a good. Just got to figure out what the heck is going on here. Yeah, it was a good one. Philosophy more. Yeah, more money. Just want to make sure I didn't miss any questions. They block you. Yeah, I'm just thinking it was a spelling error on the Suru. I've never heard of it before. 5.5 years after my discussion, I've never seen that term come in there, so I'm guessing it was just a spelling. If you guys have not checked out the infamous, notorious episode 355, Renee is urging you to do so. Be time well spent. All right, folks, I'll see you, well, maybe Friday, if not, next Wednesday.